they put it on their currency. That's kind of cool. Eclipses are beautiful, and everybody got excited, right? And so, on the upper side of the note, I don't know what the artist was trying to do there. That pink blob looks kind of menacing, right? Like it's some kind of amoeba coming into the solar system. I don't know if that means something in Romanian culture. Pink blobs from space. But, all right, England, you know England has so many great scientists. So this is Charles Darwin. This is a 10-pound note. Shown as a, bald and bearded, but he did his best work before he turned 26. His most noted work was done before he turned 26. So they really should put a young, dapper-looking fellow here. I think they wanted to increase the gravitas of his presence. And what's his favorite bird?
Finch.
Finches, of course. So here's drawn a hummingbird. All right, well, it's a bird with a beak. All right, so we'll take it. I think the artists were not talking to the... They just knew it was a bird with some kind of beak. And so there it is. There's the thought that counts, I think. It's not just Europe. You go to the Middle East. This up there is from Iraq. This is a famous philosopher from 1,000 years ago. And his name is Al-Hazen, otherwise known as Ibn Al-Hazen. He's got some other multiple names. But Al-Hazen, by the way, we featured him in one of an upcoming episode of Cosmos. By the way, so you learn about what he did. On this currency, you see there's a diagram. What he did was figure out that sight was a passive phenomenon that involved light entering the eyeball and making an image. Beforehand, people thought that sight, you sent beams out from your eyes, illuminating whatever you were looking at. Right? And think about it. That's how you can have the legend of, what's the snake for hair lady? Medusa. If she looked at you, you turned to stone. That implies something's coming out of her eyes. But nothing's coming out of her eyes. Well, okay, she's got snake for hair, anything's possible. But it's think about the lore and legend of what sight meant until we understood how sight worked. And this is the fellow who did it. He's on the Iraqi note. This is an Israeli note. It's got Albert Einstein. Einstein was not Israeli, but when you're really smart, people claim you. Right? They all want to associate with your situation. Let's just go back to Europe real quick. I got upper right's Galileo. Come on, here. We got Galileo, Carl Friedrich Gauss, the 10 Deutschmarks, Michael Faraday, another person we featured in Cosmos. Michael Faraday, he basically invented electricity. Right? You know the motor that converts electricity, that converts... He figured out. He created the first generator. Right? Yeah. We still use generators today for electricity. This man, the world would be really different if he never existed. All right? It would be greatly delayed in the progress we would have made. And he's well known. This is Louis Pasteur, French, of course, and I don't know what's happening to this dog, but it doesn't look good for the dog. Saying. Middle left, that's my man, Isaac Newton. That's my man. Have you seen that video that's been going around? So, 5 years ago, I was asked by Big Think, which is I don't even know who they are, but they asked me to come by and answer some questions. And they asked me who was like the smartest person ever, and I gave a 3.5-minute reply talking about Isaac Newton. And in that reply, I listed all of his accomplishments and then said, you know, he did all this like by the time he was 26. And then I postured after I did that. I went, became a meme. No, that frame of that video. Someone lied. See, that's how you get the good seats. So, someone snapped a frame of that video where I'm doing the line through it, and then put on it says, watch out, you have a badass over here. I don't even understand it, but it's out there. It's the internet, you don't ask questions. So now watch. Monday of this week. Monday. Someone posted that same video, but in slow motion. Now, I said it wrong. The original video is only 2 minutes long. The slow motion version is 3 minutes and 17 seconds. And it is creepy hilarious. It got 500,000 views in 3 days. It's people saying, what's he smoking? You know? So, I don't know, if we have time, maybe I'll have an internet connection up there, maybe I'll bring it up. It's just completely creepy. But it's because it's what I was doing when I was talking about Isaac Newton, because the guy is unimpeachably brilliant. Anyway, it's Isaac Newton on the 1 pound note, Euler, a Swiss mathematician in the upper left. And then I ask you, in this world, when you think of what nation, you know, is responsible for really good engineered products, what comes to mind? Germany, of course. In fact, it's a selling point. It's German engineering. Maybe other countries have good engineering. It just doesn't work as a selling point. You've never seen an ad saying, Polish engineering, right? You've just never seen it. Doesn't mean they won't have good engineers in Poland. We have the Polish people right here. They got good people in Poland. It's just not part. So how does this come about? Is there something cultural where they care about engineering? And then I thought about this. And you know, the person who started the American space program was German. Right after the war, Werner von Braun, Einstein. You know, all these like really famous German people in the 20th century. So maybe that's what fed that. And then I said, is it something in the drinking supply? You know, what might it be? And then I looked at Carl Friedrich Gauss. There he is. He's looking back at you. See, Pasteur's looking that way. So is Euler. So is Galileo. Gauss is looking straight at you. He's talking to you. Okay? See that? Faraday's not even looking at you. He's got this far away kind of face. Gauss? That's Gauss. Okay? Gauss. Because you know what he's trying to tell you. He says, I have a mathematical distribution function on my currency. Who in the world has the audacity to put mathematics on their currency? Germany did it, right? And this is the famous bell curve. Gauss invented the bell curve. It's not even a formula in the traditional sense. It is a distribution function. You don't learn about those until like 3 years in. Alright? So I don't think the people who minted this and designed it are thinking that everyone will understand the mathematical distribution function. I don't think they're thinking that. They're just saying, here's an important person, a citizen of their country. This is one of his most important contributions. And it's obviously math. And so maybe when you're growing up, you'll wonder what that is. And one day, you will learn what that is. And that will be an achievement for you. Because the country values this, because it's on their currency. Then I thought, okay, in America, do we have any, in the United States, do we have any like scientists on our money? You know? Okay, so 4 of you have seen a $100 bill. Benjamin Franklin, one of the most famous scientists of his day. So then I said, and he studied electricity. And I said, okay, we got a scientist. So let's look for where the lightning bolt is. No. Is there a kite with a key? He fished for electricity in the thunderstorm. No. Is there a lightning rod? He invented the lightning rod. No. There is no electricity on this bill. He's not on the bill for being a scientist. He's on the bill for being a founding father of the United States. And the lightning rod, come on now. You know how many buildings that saved? Do you realize this is how it works? You put a piece of metal sticking up at the highest point of your structure. When a cloud comes over, that's sort of lightning hungry, electrons gather underneath your house. And the lightning strike is when the electrons go to the cloud. But if you have a pointy little metal stick there, you can discharge the electrons slowly and don't build up that big discharge and the lightning won't hit you. And if it does hit you, it hits the rod and goes to the ground and saves your home. Back in the late 1700s, early 1800s, what is the tallest structure in any town?
Church.
The church. So you know what was happening before the lightning round? Churches were getting struck by lightning. And other churches used that as an argument for you worshiping the wrong God. Get you to come over to their town and worship in their churches. When Ben Franklin distributed these, he was accused of thwarting the will of God. And I thought about it and I said, whoever you're worshiping, you're saying this guy, this womanizing, beer-drinking guy, thwarted the will of, he puts up a metal stick. And your God can't somehow get around that if he wants to destroy the church? I'm thinking, who are you worshiping? Ben is getting in your way, you know? I was so proud of you guys. I learned this just a couple of weeks ago. So proud. On your $5 note, you get the camera! Now I'm told, I don't get up here that often, but I'm told this replaced a hockey stick. Is that right?
Yep, hockey sweater. Yep.
How did you take that? See, hockey doesn't need PR, I don't think. All right, but we all know, anytime that arm came out, there was the maple leaf. And no matter what angle, somehow it moved around. The maple leaf was visible in every possible configuration. So just congratulations for having the pride enough to put such an illustration on your car seat, however much it hurt to remove the hockey stick. So, countries can care, and I think when you care and you put it on your currency, it affects you. You know about it, you're reminded of it. But it's not forever. Just because you did it at one time, it doesn't mean you will always do it. We should never take it for granted. So just, not to get morbid on you, but I want to tell you a story that requires a little bit of back entrance here. So, September 11th, we all know what happened on that day. You may not know that it happened 4 blocks from where I live, and this is a shot from the corner of the building that I live on. It's a frame from my camcorder. This is the World Trade Center, 107 stories. For context here, because this is New York City, small buildings are 30 stories tall, 40 stories tall. The black building here on the left is 50 stories tall, and it's a hotel. The two twin towers are 107 stories tall. The north one had already been hit. North is to the right. This is 3 seconds before the south tower gets hit. Okay? So, here it comes. Now it gets hit. It hits from the other side, and it plows through. This is before the released fuel ignites. And you get what's called a deflagration wave. It's not an explosion like a detonation would be, causing a shock wave. It'll still break things apart, but it doesn't have that concussive shock wave. Because I was surprised when I saw this, I didn't feel any shock wave, which is odd. I mean, I was thinking as a physicist watching this, and so here it comes, and it doesn't take much to ignite atomized fuel, so it ignites, and then it engulfs, and this is like the remains of the 767, and people, and aluminum, and wallboard, and all the rest. 1 hour later, both buildings were down, and they would have been in that area right there, and that is the dust cloud that came up after it. That's a very beautiful building on the right, it's called the Woolworth Building, and this is the street 1 hour after they were hit, shortly after. Okay, so the point of this is not to bum anybody out, but I just want to call something to your attention. George W. Bush was president at the time, and that's when the president has to come forth and say something consoling. This is before I was on his Rolodex, because I could have really helped him out here, and I could have really helped him out. He wants to distinguish we from they. That's what he's trying to do in his speech. And he says, our God, first it's the same God, right? But he didn't apparently know that, all right? The God of Islam is the same God as the God of Christianity, the same God as the God of the Jews. It's the same God. He didn't get that, but he didn't get a lot. Our God, and he loosely quotes biblical Genesis and says, our God is the God who named the stars. And I thought, oh man. All right, we got Islamic fundamentalists playing into our buildings. He's saying, our God named the stars. Meanwhile, 2/3 of all stars that have names have Arabic names, all right? So George just blew that, all right? I'm sorry. And I could have helped him. I was on his Rolodex about 5 months after this. The fact is, Arabic star names dominate the names of stars. This is a complete list of all stars that it just goes on and on and on. Now, when I say star, the bright ones all have names. When you get dimmer, you run out of names and you just number them. But the bright ones, they have names. Now, how is this possible? What's going on? You have Islamic fundamentalists flying airplanes into buildings in New York City, yet 3/4 of the stars in our night sky have Arabic names. There must have been some time where, no, they weren't flying airplanes into buildings. Maybe at some point in the past, maybe they were looking up and wondering about the world, about the universe. And yes, in fact, such a time existed. And so this is just to complete the list here. Yeah, so there you go. So there was a time, it's right here. In that period, this is a 300-year period. Look up any book. It will describe this time as the golden era, the golden age of Islam. The golden age. By the way, over this time, in Europe, they were disemboweling heretics. In Baghdad, the roads were open to everybody. Everybody, Jews, Christians, Muslims, doubters, today we might call them atheists. Everybody had a seat at the table. There were institutions of higher learning. There were advances. There were major advances in algebra. That's an Arabic word. Algebra. Many of the words that begin with AL is the in Arabic, algebra. The word algorithm is Arabic. All of this is traceable to that 300-year period. Our system of numerals are Arabic numerals. The zero was invented in India. It was a curiosity at the time. It worked its way to the Middle East. They said, yes, we can work with that. All right, the zero comes in, the number system gets set up, algebra gets invented, arithmetic gets perfected, and advance in mathematics, agriculture, engineering, medicine, navigation, astrolabes are traceable to Islam in that period. They were navigating by the stars. That's how you get names that are Arabic. Happened in that 300-year period. What happened after? How come they're not still doing it? Things change. So there's a Muslim scholar, Al-Ghazali, he's still read today. He is to Islam kind of what St. Augustine was to Christianity. If you read St. Augustine, it's somebody's got to organize the writings of the prophets. Somebody's got to put it together and tell you what it all means if you're either illiterate or not a deep thinker. And so people rise up, filling a little bit of a gap there, and say, this is what it takes to be a good Muslim. Here's how to interpret the Quran. Here's what it means to follow Muhammad. And a lot of that came out of his writings. But it included statements such as, for example, and you even hear it today among people who are Muslim and Arabic fluent. If something falls off the counter, the explanation given is Allah willed it. That is the Allah did it. If you trip on the step, Allah willed that. Things that went on around you was the act of God. And when that's your explanation for things, you're no longer in a position to question it any other way. Your curiosity for the causes and effects of things comes to an abrupt halt. By the way, if you poll historians, they'll say, oh, well, the Islamic Empire, the Mongols came and they burned the Rhine. They'll give you a war explanation for this. That's common in history books. I'm accounting for it philosophically. Ideas took over that halted the free exchange of theories about how the world works. And in there, it was suggested that manipulation of numbers was the work of the devil. The mathematics ended. The scientific discoveries ended. And by the way, our guy on that Iraq note, he's from that period. How come Iraq doesn't put somebody in just from this century, or last century, or the century before? They have to go back 1,000 years to get him. Yes, it's a very proud time in the Islamic community. But they haven't recovered from it. There's 1.3 billion Muslims in the world. And after that period, by the way, there were other occasions where the culture rose up. In Spain, you look at the Alhambra. Beautiful architecture, but the science had ended. The mathematics had ended. Basically, compared to that period, it basically ended. So, you could be at the top of your game, but that doesn't mean it's forever. You have to cherish the idea of free thought. What's interesting to me is, I have been told, I haven't seen this confirmed, that Cosmos is being sort of heavily edited in the Middle East. We had a whole episode just on evolution. And I'm thinking, well, that's not having an open seat at the table. That is suppressing ideas rather than allowing them in. I would have thought maybe someone would have looked back 1,000 years ago and said, what were they doing then that we're not doing now? They were not censoring ideas back then. Now, I'm American, so I wonder, what do we look like in this century? I'm old enough, we got some old timers here. Surely it happened in Canada too, because I remember Expo 67. I was there, okay? Yeah, it made the Montreal went bankrupt, if I remember correctly. But you know what I thought was coolest about the subway in Montreal that had rubber tires? So the train was like, and you go to New York City, it's like, screech, screech. And I'm thinking, rubber tires, that's like really cool. But if you're old enough to remember, if you were alive back in the 60s, that's what tomorrow looked like to you. Who here is old enough to remember? Raise your hand. Thank you. Okay? This wasn't just because we were all on drugs. Okay? Maybe it's a little bit of that, but not the whole thing. There was Life magazine, Look magazine, Time. You didn't have to go very far. You didn't have to wait for very long before there was an article on the home of tomorrow, the city of tomorrow, transportation of food of tomorrow. Everything was about tomorrow. We had the World's Fair in 1964, Expo 67. These were occasions to think about tomorrow. We were going to the moon. Nobody dreams this way anymore. And I don't know what's the cost. What's going on in our world today? First, I see bad math. I see it. It's bad. It's bad. Here's a headline from a local newspaper in New York. Okay? Half the schools in the district are below average. And I'm thinking, that's kind of what an average should be. About half below. I don't have to be exactly half, but approximately you expect. This is a mathematically illiterate journalist. How do we go into the future when people... Here's another one. It's a little more subtle, but I want to walk you through it. So, there were some airplane crashes, and people died, and some survived. And they learned that the people who survived, 80% of them studied the locations of the exit doors on takeoff. And it's that study that led to what they now tell you on the airplane. Find the nearest exit to you. It may be behind you. You know this, we've been on an airplane lately? That came about because of this study. And you look at the study and say, wait, just pause for a minute. Suppose 100% of the dead people had studied the locations of the exit doors on takeoff. Then you were less likely to survive for knowing where the exit doors were. You'll never know if that's true, because dead people don't speak, right? So this is missing data to properly judge how you should behave. And then, I don't even want to start Congress here. There we go.
I love it. People do the 360. I'm like, really? Really?
It's 360 is where you start.
360 degrees. So, then I thought, okay, either the member of Congress doesn't know math. Then I thought, I had a worse thought. Maybe this member of Congress does know math. I wanted you to think that the idea changed, but in fact didn't, and hid it in mathematical code. And that's only my second time in Toronto, so I haven't really hung out and looked at all your buildings. Usually I take a tour of buildings. But in New York City, I went up and down Broadway, one of the major thoroughfares in Manhattan, and I go into elevators, and this is common. In fact, 80% of elevators along Broadway Do this, sorry. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14